Yeah, that's good. It's trying to close to this mic. Good morning, everyone. How's everybody doing today? All right. Let's get rolling. So my name is Philip Lindsay. I'm the leader here at the Philadelphia Ethical Society. I'm always leaning forward into this mic, somewhat uncomfortably. I prefer the wireless mic, but we are working on providing a better experience for our folks who join us on Zoom every Sunday. And in order to give them that experience, I have to lean into this mic. I'm learning how to do that. So, welcome everyone. I personally am very excited for today's platform. Every week we meet here at 11 a.m. for a different platform with a different featured musician and a different speaker. But I want to tell you a little bit about our history before we jump into that. So, who's here for the first time? Raise your hand. Okay, I always do it every Sunday. It's always about half the people in the room, so you're not alone. Many of us are new here. There's a lot of new folks coming in. But this organization, this congregation, this movement, the Philadelphia Ethical Society, has been around for 140 years. The first ethical society was founded in New York City, the Society for Ethical Culture, in 1875 by the son of a rabbi there who went to study philosophy in Germany and came back and said, I don't believe in God anymore, but I'm interested in this thing called the congregation. I think religion still has something to offer for humanity beyond just the deity. So the idea of ethical culture is that we can come together without necessarily believing in the same things, the same priors, the same ideology, and we can focus on action in the world together, no matter what our belief system is. And that's why the motto of the Ethical Society is deed before creed. And we have two basic precepts, because you can't really form a community without solid principles. You do need some solid ground to stand on. And there's many of them, but there's two basic ones. And one is this concept of ethical action, deed before creed. Another is acting so as to elicit the best in others. And that was, in 1875, Felix Adler's core philosophy, acting so as to elicit the best in others, which really attracted me to ethical culture, because to me that, in 21st century terms, is facilitative leadership skills. It means working to organize communities in ways that enables us to work together, given our different skill sets, given our different backgrounds, our different communication styles. So that's who we are at the Ethical Society. We focus on this building as a third space for democratic life, community life on Rittenhouse Square. We are the affordable space on Rittenhouse Square for hundreds of organizations that rent us every year. Over 50,000 people come and use our space, this floor, the second floor, for all kinds of programs. And then we also operate a environmental education camp called Camp Linden in Chester County. The Brandywine runs through it. It's a beautiful piece of land that enables us to have a sense of environmental belonging. And that's a big pillar of what we do at the Ethical Society, and it's also the core feature, I think, of today's chat by Mike Weilbacher. And I'm really excited to have him speak. Before we move into first a song by our featured musician, Leah, and then Mike's talk, we're going to offer a moment of silence, as we always do every Sunday, to give you just a minute to relax. Take a deep breath. It's always the only moment of silence I give myself a week. So it always feels like it was like 60 seconds ago when the last one was. So take a deep breath, relax. I'll call you back in about a minute. to enjoy and listen to those birds outside. Not all is lost in the world. So, later on there's going to be time for announcements, but now we always offer a moment for any joys or concerns that anyone would like to share. Anyone is open to anyone. We ask these to be brief so we can get to the program, but this is a moment to share something that's on your mind, either as a joy or a concern. Yeah, let me bring you
I am so grateful that our friends Bill and Carol joined us today.
any of the joys or concerns. Thanks.
I'm happy to be alive.
We're happy you're alive too.
I like that it is slightly warmer these days.
I just want to wish everyone a happy Lunar New Year. It starts on Tuesday.
Do we have one over here, Sharon? Okay. All right. Thank you. This is the joy week. Last week was all concerns. Okay, so every Sunday we have a featured musician, a platform speaker. There's always a song before and a song after. And I think this is Leah Menaker's first time. I'm pronouncing your last name correct? Menaker. Leah Menaker's first time with Ethical. So please join me in welcoming Leah.
Thank you so much. I'm so honored to be here. My name is Leah Menaker, and I think this is the perfect first song to start with, given that, it's Valentine's Day weekend, but also, this idea of forming in community, and kind of also just connecting to what's around us and the things around us and life around us. So this is called A Little House. I'm very excited to play this gorgeous piano. I looked for sun, but all I found was rain. I think I wanted anything that didn't feel the same. And I chased a million dreams, and some I even caught. But all that I could think about was what I hadn't got. A little house where we can grow, the pulse that beats in the hands I hold. You had a girl sleeping next to me. What if it's all I needed? I know I tend to see things from a darker view. I wish that I could live my life as easy as you do. And if I could take a moment, slow my body down, there's really very little that I need to stick around. Maybe you and a little house where we can grow, the pulse that beats in the hands I hold. You had a girl sleeping next to me. What if it's all I needed? Always in my head, I know, but I don't need much more than just a bed to rest this set of bones next to.
talk about Mike Weilbacher. Mike is an environmental educator with 30 years of experience teaching in a variety of settings. He was the executive director of the School Coast Center here in Philadelphia and directed the Briar Bush Nature Center in Abington. He was also the founding director of the Lower Merion Conservancy in Gladwin. Prior to that, he was a museum educator for both the Academy of Natural Sciences and the Franklin Institute. He also appeared, I don't know if this is a little bit out of date, on public radio as Mike, the all-natural science guy, on the live children's radio show Kids Corner on WXPN, where he's been talking to children about nature and the environment for over 2 decades. He also performs original vaudeville-style theater about nature and science, having appeared on stages in parks, festivals, museums, nature centers, churches, conferences, and more. Mike's work has earned him the title of Citizen Hero from the Philadelphia Inquirer and Environmental Educator of the Year and Outstanding Conservation Educator from various PA environmental groups. So please welcome Mike with me.
Thank you all. How's everyone? You enjoying this winter? So, as Phil mentioned, it's so great to be here with you, by the way, this morning. As Phil mentioned, I traveled the region giving lectures and walks on a variety of topics, including a lecture, the only lecture that I discovered so far about what climate change will do specifically to Philadelphia. So what does it mean for us? So the data from the Philly region. The title of the lecture is kind of a signal as to where our weather is headed. So hotter, wetter, weirder. This winter definitely qualifies in the weird category. This is not a typical winter for Philadelphia. Mushrooms are having a moment. I don't know if you've noticed this, but there are suddenly mushroom extracts everywhere, mushroom coffee. Mycelial threads of mushrooms are now being turned into packaging. So Amazon may soon be sending you stuff wrapped in mushroom mycelium, which is really cool. So, and mushrooms can even address climate change. So they're addressing climate change, microplastics, your health, their cancer-fighting abilities. And the coolest thing for me anyway is that the mycelial threads of mushrooms are underneath the entire forest and connect the whole forest. It's called the wood wide web. So trees essentially talk to each other and exchange sugars and things. So mushrooms are having here. I'm also the author of a new book, Wild Philly. Brought some copies with me if you're interested. But the book has some introductory chapters about nature in the Philadelphia region. The 101 species you need to know if you live in Philly, in this region. 25 field trips to go across the whole region and see these across the whole year. So the trips are calendarized, so you get a whole year of field trips, plus 4 extra credit trips if you live in Philly, you want to go to places like the Pine Barrens, Cape May, Hawk Mountain. So I've got some books with me, my wife Gary is here, and we can sign and sell books for you at the end of the talk. But we're here to talk about the healing power of nature, how nature can help us. Anybody here make a New Year's resolution? Raise your hand. Okay. So hold that thought, right? New Year's resolution, because I bet you're going to make one at the end of this time together. And take 10 seconds and just think about your pick a favorite childhood memory. Just spend 10 seconds. Just go back. What's a time you were really happy as a kid? For any kids here, you can take your time, you're happy now, but go back and just think for 10 seconds about a time that you were really happy. You got one? Okay, hold on to that, because we're going to come back to that too. So, here is a real old school photograph of what childhood used to look like a really long time ago, when a lot of us were young, especially in urban places and cities where kids were outside. Essentially, when I grew up, the adults were indoors, and they just threw the kids out, and we were all playing in the streets and running around. So play was often very gendered, so the boys would play stickball while the girls would do jump rope or hopscotch or things like that. So it was, and you know, there's ups and downs to all of that, but nonetheless, for many years, children were outside. That's where kids were, adults were inside. Childhood has changed dramatically in recent decades. A lot of kids now spend a lot more time inside than they do outside. In fact, the average American kid spends only between 4 and 7 minutes outside in unstructured play every day. And check this out, over 7 hours a day in front of a screen. So in other words, the translation is a kid's full-time job is watching a screen. They're watching a screen 7 hours a day, a screen of some kind. So that's a big difference. And here are two cartoons that are picked up on this trend. One is the mom walking with a kid, and she's saying, see, this is called the outdoors. And the kid says, oh, I've seen this level on my video games. And there's caution children playing at that schoolyard, and none of the kids are on any of the playground equipment. They're all sitting with their tablets. So childhood has changed. I'm sorry?
It's not only the kids.
It's the parents, he says. Hold that thought. Yep. 20 years ago already?
Look that way so the Zoom people can see you.
Oh, okay. Hi, Zoom people. Sorry about that. 20 years ago, a journalist named Richard Louv wrote a book called Last Child in the Woods. This is a book that first began calling attention to what he calls nature deficit disorder. The kids are growing up with a deficit of nature in their lives. So the book has actually been out for 20 years. And he talked to a kid from California, a fourth grader, who said something really obvious. He said, why are you inside all day? And the kid said, that's where the clothes are. Simple as that. So people like me have been worried about this issue for a very long time. And yes, adults are often on screens alongside their kids, and you may have noticed this too. Lots of new parents, when they're walking their baby, are still on the screen, and they're not oohing and eyeing and cooing at the baby. They're looking at the screen instead. So yeah, the whole culture is spending a lot of time on screens right now. An EPA study notes that the average American spends 93% of their life indoors, 87% of that inside buildings, 6% in cars, leaving only 7% of our time outdoors doing things like raking beaches, chores. So we're inside a lot. And lots of people, like Ludwig van Beethoven, have figured out there's importance to being outdoors. Beethoven has said, the woods, the trees, and the rocks give us the resonance we need. The woods, the trees, and the rocks give us the resonance we need. There's a nature writer from the turn of the century, 1800s into 1900s, who's pretty much forgotten. He was a best-selling author back in his day, good friend of Teddy Roosevelt, no surprise. But John Burroughs wrote a bunch of best-selling books back in that era, and he says, I go to nature to be soothed, healed, and have my senses put in order. Well, those are all nice quotes, but what does the science say? What does science say? What do studies indicate about this? Well, one easy place to start is that we all know that sunlight hitting our skin creates vitamin D. So simple as that. There are other ways to get vitamin D, but sunlight is, your body will make it so if you're in the sun. So there's one piece of it. But then there's this extraordinary study that dates back 40 years already from a hospital in suburban. They always say in the write-ups, a suburban Pennsylvania hospital. They never name the town. They always say suburban Pottstown. But anyway, so the study looked at patients in the same hospital, all of whom had the same exact operation with similar outcomes. Right? So look at this, and the only difference between the two groups was one group had a view of a brick wall outside their hospital room. The other group had a view of a tree. So you've got the brick wall group, and you've got the tree group. And you can see this group's here, they're looking at the trees, these guys here are looking at brick walls. And I'm going to read from the journal Records on recovery after colectomy, I can't even pronounce that. In a suburban Pennsylvania hospital between 1972 and 1981 were examined to determine whether assignment to a room with a window view of a natural setting might have restorative influences. Patients assigned to rooms with windows looking out on a natural scene had shorter post-operative stays. They went home sooner. Received fewer negative evaluative comments in nurses' notes. They were happier. And they gave the nurses not as hard a time. Right? They were happier. Received fewer and took fewer potent analgesics. They weren't in as much pain. They didn't need as much aspirin. The only difference is seeing a tree outside the window. They're happier, they get well sooner, and they're in less pain. Right? So this is one of the studies that this first began taking notice. People began first taking notice of this. And yet what we know is that in so many cities, this is West Philadelphia, the streets don't have a whole lot of trees. So the people who live in them don't have much of a view of trees. And so what do we know about that? From the University of Chicago study, just 11 more trees on a city block, just 11, decreases cardiovascular conditions in a way comparable to increases in annual personal income of $20,000. Moving to a neighborhood with a higher, $20,000 higher median income, or being 1.4 years younger. You age better looking at trees. So street trees, it turns out, become really important. And check this out. If you have more vegetation on your street in your neighborhood, the crime rate goes down. Murder rate goes down. Numerous studies have showed this, right? So vegetation's high, total crimes are down, property crimes are down, violent crimes are down. Just from trees. In Japan, a scientist had a thought. He knows that people get relaxed when they go outside in forests. So he sprayed this neonatal ward with a whole bunch of babies who've never been outdoors. They're newborn, never been outside. He sprays them with pinene, which is the scent, not sprays them, sprays the air with pinene, which is the chemical that gives pine scent. So just spraying pine scent in the air, right? What happens? So just pine scent. I'm sorry, but I had the results there, I'm sorry. Sprays pine scent, the whole room, essentially, the blood pressure of the kids all noticeably drop. The kids chill out. So they've never been outdoors, they don't know what a pine tree smells like, but they calm down by smelling pine. We are hardwired to respond to pine, amazingly enough. It's in our genes somewhere. So, your childhood memory, remember 10 minutes ago you picked your childhood memory? Anybody have a childhood memory, favorite one that was outdoors? Was it outdoors? Check out, you see all the hands? Keep the hands up. Look around for a second. All right. A lot of your favorite childhood memories are outdoors. Good. I was hoping that. Mappiness launched a website in 2010, the world's biggest happiness study. And it quickly accumulated lots of data points from 20,000 users. Essentially, people on the Mappiness survey just registered how happy they were at various times during the course of the day. And 1 million data points later, what do they know? People are least happy when sick or at work. Okay, got that. That's easy. Most happy when with friends or lovers. All right, that makes sense too, but check this out. On average, study participants are significantly and substantially happier outdoors in all green or natural setting types than they are in urban environments. People were happier when they were outside. And a lot of your favorite memories came when you were outside. So the outdoors somehow elevates our mood, makes us happier, so much so we just see a tree in a hospital room, we get better faster. And yet 93% of the time they were either indoors or in vehicles. So we know that we respond to nature, and yet we stay indoors. So why does nature do this? For one thing, nature lowers our stress. There's a huge thing called forest bathing right now. There are whole books about it. This gentleman, Dr. King Lee, from Japan, is kind of the world's guru on forest bathing, what they call in Japan Shinri Yoku. So he has done a number of studies that include forest bathing. That's him right there, Dr. Lee. Leads a bunch of businessmen on a trip into a forest. They're staying for several days. And when they practiced forest bathing, he noticed that there was a 12% decrease in cortisol levels in their blood. People who produce high cortisol levels and high blood pressure are more prone to heart disease, metabolic disease, dementia, and depression. So high cortisol levels are not good for us. There's a decrease when you go outside. A 7% decrease in sympathetic nerve activity. Our nerves are less jangly. A decrease in our blood pressure, 1.4%, and a decrease in our heart rate, 6%. So just by forest bathing, which essentially is sitting in one place quietly and watching a forest, all these restorative health benefits, better moods, lower anxiety. Still another study, people who exercise in nature as opposed to the city achieve better fitness and were more likely to keep exercising. Exercise in nature, you're more likely to keep exercising. Anybody here garden? Good, keep that up because check this out. One study of older adults found that compared with those who don't exercise, people who gardened as one of their main physical activities had lower rates of heart attack, stroke, diabetes, high cholesterol, and high blood pressure. Just gardening, right? You slow down. I think there's something about being rooted in the soil, but also there's something about seeing all the green, which we'll talk about in a second as well. And finally, unmarried pregnant women in forest prenatal classes significantly reduce their symptoms of depression and anxiety. Right? Part being a single mom giving birth to a kid is challenging, and yet outside, it helped them immensely. So nature lowers our stress. Can nature fight infection, perhaps even cancer? There's a natural killer NK cells, white blood cells, attacking cancer. So NK cells in our bloodstream, we need those, they're good to have. That same doctor, Dr. Lee from Japan, took his business people into pine forests in Japan, and check this out. After 3 days of being in the woods with him, hiking a few hours daily, the number of NK natural killer cells increased 40%. It lasted for a whole week. 1 month later, the count was still higher. During urban walking trips of the same duration, as this is your control, NK cell levels did not change. No change walking in cities, big change walking in natural areas. 1 hour walk in city parks where there is some green elevated NK cells too, but the surge does not last as long. Different study, 13 subjects locked in a hotel room for 3 nights, those poor people, but they had humidifiers vaping oil from a cypress tree native to Japan, so they're getting cypress oil. They experienced a 20% increase in NK cells just from breathing cypress oil. Why do you want to get a humidifier now? They reported being less fatigued. The control group, right? So they had a humidifier, but just steam, no change. So breathing in this oil is good for you. The same doctor that studied every prefecture, which is pretty much comparable to a county perhaps. There was a direct correlation within a specific area between a larger percentage of forest coverage and lower rates of cancer deaths. Right? More forest, if you live with more forest, cancer rates are lower. This correlation was significant particularly for uterine, breast, and lung cancers in women, and cancers of the prostate, liver, and colon in men. For women suffering from lung cancer, the data showed a 13% higher mortality rate in the prefecture with less surface area covered by forest. The difference in male deaths from prostate cancer is almost 20%. A significant amount of forest area, says Dr. Lee, can contribute to a lower incidence of cancer. Of course, not all of us have the ability to live in places that are forested, but nonetheless what we know is that trees are good for us. In a different study in Korea, The immune-boosting killer T cells of women with breast cancer increased after a 2-week forest visit and stayed elevated for 14 days. So nature lowers our stress, fights infection. Nature is also visually healing and restful. So just that green actually is your blood pressure right now is lowering because you're seeing the forest. Green, we respond to green. We are hardwired for that as well. We evolved in green spaces as a species, so we like this green. So green is a very powerful color, but something else is going on too. Here's a snowflake, of which you've seen too many this winter, right? But notice how this angle here is replicated in this angle here, which is replicated in this angle right here. So a snowflake shows what's called fractal geometry. So there's fractals involved in snowflakes, and fractals also are found in clouds and Romanesque broccoli and lightning bolts and even forests. So there's a lot of fractal geometry going on in these natural shapes where you take this right here, this angle, and then replicate it again, and then replicate it again, and then replicate it again. You can see you're approaching now a natural shape, and using these fractals, you can essentially mathematically create a leaf. So there's a lot of fractal geometry happening in natural spaces, and your eyes respond to those fractals. So the movement of our eye uses a search pattern that is also a fractal. It makes big passes and then smaller micro passes. Stress reduction is triggered when the fractal structure of the eye matches the fractal image being viewed. And it turns out that there are a lot of mid-range, if you measure the ratios in fractals, there's a lot of mid-range fractals in a forest. Your eyes love mid-range fractals. So when you are looking at a forest, your eyes also have a chance to essentially chill out. Jackson Pollock paintings, amazingly, also had tons of mid-range fractals in them, which maybe is perhaps why he's popular, or was it back in the day. So there's fractals happening in there as well. Cities don't have a lot of fractals, a lot of straight lines, a lot of 90-degree angles, right? Very hard, and this stresses out your eye, so it's missing that whole fractal piece. So it's the color green when you walk in a forest, it's the fractals that are in the forest, but also your eye likes that depth where you can see through the forest, and you see tree and then tree and then tree and then tree, right? We spend lots of time looking at flat screens, which it turns out are not great for our eyes, so this our eye finds for us. The third reason is good. So urban environments require what's called direct attention. It forces us to ignore distractions and exhausts our brains. So directed attention, you have to look at one thing. So best example, you're crossing a city street. You want to pay attention to the light, make sure you got it right. You want to look for cars that are coming this way. You got to pay fierce attention. If there's someone yelling behind you, you're trying to ignore that because you want to pay attention to this and this. So you're really focused here. That's direct attention, and it's exhausting for us. So even just watching this slide is exhausting your eyes, right? So go back to this where you can go through the whole forest and see everything. Our eye is responding to that. And a lot of us need glasses in part because we don't spend enough time looking through the whole, three-dimensional world that we're spending too much of our time in the flat world. Hearing nature relaxes us. Hearing nature, right? Noise. Cities are very noisy places. Lots of studies done on noise. Here's Overbrook High School in West Philadelphia. And a big study was done in the EU. For every 5 decibel increase in noise, reading scores dropped the equivalent of a 2-month delay. So that kids were almost a year behind in neighborhoods that were 20 decibels louder. Lots of studies on why kids in cities don't learn as well, and no study has really, we haven't landed on this, that urban environments are just noisy, and that puts the kids on edge. Stress hormones rise in noisy neighborhoods. Heart rate shoots up when you hear a truck. It's harder for some people to fully unwind in an urban setting. Liverpool, one study showed that students who listened to bird song were suddenly more attentive, right? Bird song really helped a lot. And this worked with just about any bird. This is a wood thrush, one of my favorite singers. It worked with just about every song, but it's the exception of one. The crow sound did not relax anybody. So everybody else was relaxing except for the crow. Yet another reason, nature helps us stay sane, literally. Here's a study from the pandemic. A study of 13,000 older Canadians found those living near more greenery were less likely to experience depression during COVID-19. The inverse association between greenness and depression during the pandemic, this is great, was strongest among those of lower socioeconomic status. So as green space, as an area got more green, levels of depression went down. A study in Copenhagen, in Denmark, showed more than 900,000 people. Children who grew up at the lowest levels of green space had up to a 55% higher risk of developing a psychiatric disorder, independent from effects of other known risk factors. So independent of other factors, green space made people saner. Nature makes us smarter. This is from the Children in Nature Network. Richard Louv, the author who started this whole movement of connecting kids in nature, began this nonprofit. They did a bunch of studies that nature improves academic performance, academic outcomes, like a hospital room. Kids who have a view of trees outside their classroom perform better too. Learning outside is better. It helps with your focus and attention when you're outside, and ADD, ADHD tends to calm down. Symptoms calm down when people are outside, kids are outside. So students even learn better in nature. There are studies of children learning something in nature and taking tests, and they do better on the test scores. One other piece, when kids play in this kind of setting on like concrete or asphalt, the play tends to be up-down. There's games you win and lose. Unlike this one, they become more gendered too. When kids play in natural areas like this, the gender thing breaks down, the play becomes cooperative. There's no winners and losers anymore. So that kids naturally play differently in these two spaces, just as an FYI. So, nature also is better for fetal growth, time outdoors, right? The fetus grows better, healthier birth weights. Vitamin D levels are higher, the eyes are healthier, social emotional well-being is better, increased physical activity when kids are outdoors, which lowers the risk of obesity. So unbelievable benefits from being outside. So there's a movement, it's small, modest perhaps, but it's happening, of nature preschools across not just the US, but the world. So as Phil mentioned, I directed the Schuylkill Center, which founded the first nature preschool in the state of Pennsylvania. There are now dozens of these across the US. So the kids don't spend lots of time indoors. They spend most of the school day, or all of the school day, outside. Nature preschools. There are now nature playscapes in many parks and nature centers where play areas have wood and stone to play on. School playgrounds now are adjusting to this, so the kids are sort of calmer and happier when they're playing in these areas. So what does all this mean for us? I think there's a movement now across the planet too with what's called biophilic design. So it's architects who are designing buildings to better connect with nature. So one easy way is just to have a room with lots of glass that looks out into the outdoors, into a forest, if you've got that. But nonetheless, there are other things happening too. Here is a university in Israel that essentially brought the outside in to this learning space. So this is actually inside, but it looks like they're outdoors. Here is a hotel in Singapore with extraordinary multi-levels of forests. So all these people have views and access to all those trees. And here, since we're in the Olympics in Milan, Bosco verticale, who knows their Italian? You know what that means? Vertical forest. There's the vertical forest, right? So here's essentially a building, an apartment building that goes way tall with like 900 trees and plants of different kinds. I mean, it's just crazy. So I think this is starting to happen now where we're bringing the indoors out of the outdoors in. It's great to see. There's an organization called Park RX where doctors will prescribe time in the outdoors. So if you are ailing from something, doctors say, take a 2-hour walk once a week. So you get outdoor prescriptions. Lots of places like the cemetery are now holding wellness walks. You wouldn't think that a wellness walk would be in a cemetery's job description, but nonetheless, they're just trying to get people into the cemetery as marketing, but a wellness walk is a good thing. So wellness walks now, outdoor yoga. You can see lots of parks and nature centers sponsor outdoor yoga now. Ecotherapy is slightly catching on, where the therapist meets you in a green space and goes for a walk. And it's the therapists have found it very effective that people open up sooner when they're in an outdoor setting. So ecotherapy is happening, and there's things that you can do as well. So you can do forest bathing, and of course, just get a chair or sit on a stump and just sit in a forest for a few minutes every so often. Lots of books about this. They'll tell you how to go forest bathing. You don't need the book, you just need to sit in the forest. In summary, the biggest boosts in emotional and restorative experiences occurred after 5 hours per month in natural settings, says one study. 5 hours per month, that seems doable, right? 5 hours is just more than an hour, a little more than an hour a week. So try that, perhaps. If you go 10 hours, you will reach a new level of feeling better and better. A study of 20,000 people separately found that those who spent 2 hours a week in green spaces were substantially more likely to report good health and psychological well-being than those who don't. 2 hours was a hard boundary. This study showed there was no benefits for people who didn't meet that threshold. So it's slightly different than the previous study who said, 5 hours a month, you're good. This one's saying 2 hours a week is the threshold. So nonetheless, you can get in one of those ballparks. And of course, you'll always get vitamin D from that. Richard Louv calls nature now in his latest book vitamin N. So we all need our dose of vitamin N. So you can go for a walk in a forest or any green space. You can hug a tree, but you don't have to hug a tree. Just going for a walk. Even Rittenhouse Square is restorative because it's got wonderful trees there. Anybody have a New Year's resolution to get outside more? Some hands are going up. So lots of benefits if we spend more time in the outdoors. So I want to thank you all for having me. Really appreciate the time. Barry and I will stay after, and if anybody wants to check out the books, happy to do that. And
Thank you, Mike. So now we're going to move into our talk back, which is our Q&A for the next 15 or so minutes. So I'll take questions, as I have. If the older members, the people who've been around, will be patient with me. I'm going to try to call on people who've been here, who are here for the first time first. But I'll mix it up a little bit this week. I've got lots of questions, but I'm going to go right to you all. Who's got a question? Oh, Leah, you're new.
I'm curious how winter plays into this all. When there's less greenery and it's so hard to get outside, but you want to, and how does that play into our health?
wait, how does what house does
The winter,
The
when there's
winter.
not as much greenery and the leaves are off the trees. And
It's, which is one of the reasons, winter is so hard. You might notice it's now getting dark after 5:30, isn't that? Which is itself great. Winter can be hard, but what you've got, I think, if you walk into a forest even now, there are some evergreen trees, so you'll get those, but your eyes will also get the benefits of the branches. So you'll get the benefits of looking through the whole forest, so you get that, but then you have all the fractal branches that your eyes will respond to. So yes, you're missing the green, but you're getting those other benefits, and plus vitamin D. Plus, the evergreens are giving off those chemicals that our body responds to as well, right? I don't think the pine scent from a taxi driver's I don't think that relaxes you quite the same way. Yeah. Maybe that's one reason why winter is so hard for so many, but it's not just the darkness, but it's the lack of green.
I'm curious, what about the impact of being near water, like a river, a creek, the ocean, a lake?
Yeah, I did not focus on that at all, thank you. But what rivers are going to do something to you like birdsong will. So the sound of a river will be as calming as birdsong, or the sound of ocean waves. Those also are calming. One thing I haven't done yet is look at studies of the air around, especially the ocean, along beaches, and is the air, there's something different about what ocean waves do to the air that's also restored. That's another piece I want to get to. But I think that the sound of those things will help you immensely. Plus, the river, that's fractals for days all in there. So just looking at the river, and waves as well.
I was going to ask about sound and smell, because I was thinking of what would happen if someone is blind. Is there still some
Yes.
advantage to being outside?
Yes. Yes, so sound is huge, right? Vitamin D is huge. What you're breathing in, also the sense that you're breathing in. So look at that through other, and probably if a blind person is with somebody, they'll figure out that person's chilling out, which will relax them too. So they have that heightened awareness. It's a great question.
Thank you for the presentation.
Oh, yes.
My question is in regards to the ecotherapy at University of Pennsylvania. We're developing a treatment model for that ecotherapy. But I guess the evidence is overwhelming. My question or my fear is, how do you balance that reality of like there's randomized, like multiple evidence to show this to support mental health and well-being?
Yes.
However, on the other side, you're having these pseudosciences that is telling you like keto diets cures schizophrenia, and there's a very close parallel line between that which is nutritional psychiatry and what ecotherapy is doing. So how do you balance that reality of like there's this good evidence that supports this for well-being, however there's a political movement and pseudoscience that is like trying to market pseudoscience that doesn't help?
That's a great question, and not being a therapist, I don't know that I have a great answer for an answer that rises to your question. I think that how do you do the research on the therapist that you're interested in to find out that if they're practicing ecotherapy that are legitimate? I'm not sure how you would do that. So I know that it's happening. That's why I included it as one of the ways that the culture is responding. But how you discern between somebody who's good and somebody who's practicing pseudoscience, I'm not really sure. Do you have an answer for that?
I don't specifically know if I have an answer, but I'm trying to figure out because in society, we are, at the end of the day, our science is for the population.
Right.
And how is it that we are making sure that the science that we are putting out or what we are putting out to the public is rigorous and evidence-based, and we are not deceiving people that if you have schizophrenia, go into the woods.
Right.
On the other hand, where you can provide the evidence that if you are stressed, forest bathing, ecotherapy is restorative, is positive. So that's, I think, the fine line that I'm trying to balance in terms of public-facing research.
Yeah. And I think the challenge of the modern world is, when I do these shows and do the research, I'm using websites that I know are science-based, and there are studies that have been peer-reviewed and replicated, so they're coming from journals, but the web, of course, is full of stuff that's just somebody knows somebody who said, hey, anyway. Thank you. Yes?
Hi, my name is Adam.
Hi.
I just recently moved to the city here from Northern California.
Yeah.
I was living in an area that is deemed the gateway to the redwoods, just to paint a picture of how many trees. And I live West for the past 20 years, and for a number of those years I lived off the grid,
Right.
40 minutes down dirt road, a very deep nature experience. But what I came to realize along the way after years of deep programming, in a sense, was that it's really just a matter of finding meaning in things that have become foreign to us. You know, so the way that we seek out meaning and purpose in life, most people are lost a little bit in this finding meaning in nature.
Yes.
It's like a foreign language.
Yes.
So I guess my question is, because you've looked at a lot of studies, what have you come to in terms of there's media literacy and these kinds of ways of understanding the meaning in the experience.
Right, wow. I mean, I'm one of millions of people who goes to nature to find meaning. I don't know what meaning I always get from it, but I always know I feel the most meaning when I'm in a walk like that. So, I thought you were going to go in a different direction and worried about living in a city and trying to get access to nature. But we're lucky I found
Be a good case study, though.
Maybe. No, I think that one of the issues with where modern culture is that too few people have found too little meaning in too few things. So I think there's a big search for that, but we're finding it, people looking in the wrong places and finding it in the wrong places. So I don't know, that's a whole different conversation, but no, nature is certainly not the only place to find meaning, but certainly it's a huge one for a lot of people. And I think part of why you get to that when you go into a natural area is because of the restorative benefits of being in that area, that your brain can quiet down so you can actually think better thoughts or different thoughts. Something like that. Am I coming close to?
Sounds like a good topic for a nature walk.
Yeah.
Organize around that question.
Mine is Bill.
Yeah.
I'm going to go back to the conversation we were talking about therapies that are presented online and do not have any evidence base. Well, I'm a psychologist, and I would recommend people go to therapists that have a license or certification, counselors, psychologists that have training and have ethics above all. And the ethics of my profession says you don't help anybody really unless you have an evidence-based therapy, generally speaking. So and I grew up in Philadelphia, and I almost lived in Pennypack Park.
Oh yeah. Pennypack is an extraordinary place.
That's a great place.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Yeah. One of the walks in the book is into Pennypack Park in the fall. And the beach trees are turning wonderful colors. Great beach forests up there.
I was wondering about houseplants and how many you could possibly clutter into one space for the maximum benefit.
Never too many. Yeah, I mean, that's a great winter thing too, is to have houseplants, because you're going to get the green inside. And our houseplants who actually will clean the air out of your house too. So they're processing this, they're pulling stuff out of the air, putting it in their leaves and giving you back oxygen. So yeah, lots of houseplants. So you saw in biophilic design, there's a lot of use of plants inside. Yeah. And you get the green.
So my question was about, you were mentioning at the beginning of your presentation how, like, back in the day, kids were spending more time outside and how that's changed. And some of that's with, like you said, with the technology, kids can have, games and things that kind of draw them inside. But I think another force at play is sometimes justifiably, sometimes unjustifiably paranoid from the parents of like, oh, you can't, it's dangerous to be outside. And I guess, like, I don't know if in your research you found
Absolutely.
Like kind of the balance between like
Yeah.
encouraging kids to be outside, but in like a safe way.
Yeah, Richard Louv talks about that a lot in the book Last Child in the Woods, that one of the things, so the plugs is one of the big attractions. Another is that what he calls stranger danger, that the danger of what would happen to a child being abducted essentially by playing outdoors themselves. And I think for him, what the research indicates, at least as he does it, is the media jumps on those cases. So there are relatively few of them that ever happen, but when one does happen, the media is all over it for days on end. And so we think it's more prevalent than it really is one thing. Another thing is, lots of kids walk to school. The famous thing, 7 miles uphill both ways in the snow, right? That's sort of the running joke about walking to school. I walked to school for a big stretch of time, but kids walk less to school. If they do, they're probably accompanied by parents. So kids have less agency on their own outside, and when they are outside, it's often in events organized by parents. So it's soccer, it's baseball, football, those sports that the parents are organizing. So, for better or worse, lots of us learned how to survive in the world by just being with other kids and negotiating with them. So there are a number of forces that have pulled kids inside. And when they're outside, unfortunately, they don't have enough time on their own. So one of the goals of Richard Louv certainly is just make sure kids get alone time in the outdoors with no agenda, and let them be bored for a little while, because they will soon figure out how not to be bored. But we don't let kids be bored either.
Hi, so you alluded to this question, but what would be your recommendation for people living in, say, Center City, Philadelphia?
Absolutely.
It's a 30-minute drive to get to a lot of the big parks.
Absolutely.
And, someone will go crazy trying to pace Rittenhouse Square for an hour. House plants, scenting your apartment, what would be the recommendation?
House plants for sure, container gardening for sure if you have that ability. Rittenhouse Square does work. Any city street that's tree lined will give you not the full benefits, but a big chunk of the benefits. So just walking along a tree lined street. And thankfully, we're an old city, so there are a lot of streets that still are. The city has an ambitious street planting plan, and they do want to go into the neighborhoods that are underrepresented from trees. Like Chestnut Hill has trees for days and days, but North Philadelphia has almost nothing. So the tree plan Philly is really going to work hard with places that don't have trees and get the trees into them. So that's one piece too. So there's sort of an economic justice piece of this. But a tree-lined street, it shouldn't be a half hour to Fairmount Park, would it be? But getting the Schuylkill Trail, the river trail, what they're doing is unbelievable. That you can now go all the way to Marjorie's Garden, and I think pretty soon you can go all the way up to Valley Forge. It's going to be a seamless trail. So you can get to the Schuylkill River Trail.
It already is.
You can go, you've got lots of opportunities along there, and you get in the river sound and all that good stuff. But you can walk to Bartram's Garden now, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, and I can tell you on behalf of the Ethical Society, this is one of the reasons we brought Mike, is to get us brainstorming about how we, at the Society, can program nature walks around the city, trips out to Camp Linden. So stay tuned for more of that.
Hi, you talked about being bored, or kids being bored, but adults, I think we're all used to having our podcasts in our ears and going around.
Yes.
So maximize your benefit of the 2 hours a week, or you still just be a little bored, or do you still gain a benefit by listening to Jon Stewart a lot?
Yeah. No, I think it's you're going to get some of the benefits absolutely by walking with a podcast in your ear, because your eyes are going to get all of that, and you're going to smell it. You can get the smells. But I think occasionally it would be great if you unplugged, and because Birdsong also does that for you as well. So I rarely walk outdoors listening to anything. for me, I'm a birder too, so I want to know what birds are around. But I think once in a while you should just unplug. I don't think you have to do it religiously, but I think once in a while would be great.
Hi, just a recommendation in nicer weather. I do a lot of Zooms. I'm retired now. It seems like I do even more than when I worked full time. But even for my work Zooms in nicer weather, I would sit in a park at a picnic table. And so you don't get the full engagement with nature, but you get like, one time I was doing a Zoom with my boss and squirrels are crawling across me and birds are fluttering
Squirrels are
around.
crawling across you?
Yes, I had a squirrel like...
It's not necessarily a good thing.
And another tip is, according to the census, tons of census data says that the average trip in a car is 2.5 miles for city residents. Leave your car at home and go walk or take a bike. So that's how I got here, on a bike. It's not ideal in terms of exposure to nature unless you ride along the Schuylkill River Trail. You could do that for 110 miles going north and still be exposed to nature.
Yeah. Well, you get extra props for biking in this ice, so good for you. Yeah.
A couple questions from Zoom here.
Oh, good. Hey, Sue.
Since nature supports well-being, have you studied how the digital world affects us and how nature can realistically compete with digital technology, especially given how addicted it is and how dependent we are on it in our daily lives?
Well, Meta is saying it's not addictive. So. No, I have not studied this. And yes, there are two huge, actually nature is losing the competition right now because we have already retreated indoors. I don't know. I mean, there's a lot of work now, especially with young people and social media. Some countries have even said, okay, kids can't be on social media up to a certain age. So I haven't done the studies. That maybe that's the next talk, is what the digital media does to us. But it has huge impacts on our brain, different from what nature does to us.
Sure. And the second question for Zoom, or more about the comment.
Yeah.
Ken says he was once unpopular at a workshop on teaching kids about ecology. He didn't think people should be persnickety about turning off the faucet and brushing teeth when in a water-rich place like Philly. What do you think?
Shouldn't be persnickety? I haven't heard that word in a long. Like, don't bother turning off the faucet when you brush your teeth?
Right.
Okay.
Are you for or against water waste?
I mean, with so many environmental issues, the issues are up here, and the solutions that we keep asking people to do are way down here. So, yes, it's a great practice to turn off the faucet when you're brushing your teeth. Sesame Street has songs about that. So yes. But, then when you look at big data and the amount of water it will need for the AI centers, it's and this is happening, with climate change. Our responses to climate change have been way smaller than what the issue is. And I can recycle that one extra plastic bottle, but the failure was like going to live or die on me recycling this one paper, this one plastic bottle. So anyway, we need to have much larger responses to some of the bigger issues that we have. I would still encourage that culture of doing, those nice conservation things, but we need to step up.
Thank you so much, Mike. Let's give a hand for this is excellent.
Thank you.
I have a feeling it's not the last time. And Mike's gonna stick around. He's got books over there. I'm definitely buying one today. And we'd love to think about, possible nature walks with you, or certainly nature walks at the society. So please stick around for coffee hour just after the rest of the platform if you want to discuss some of those possibilities at the society.